Hello, Venerables. Hope you are fine and well. Welcome to week 6 of the semester. And for this course, Essence of Buddhadhamma, welcome to lecture 6, the Four Noble Truths, part 2. Now, last week, we have covered the Four Noble Truths, part 1, finishing the first noble truth and the second noble truth. So this week, we will do the third noble truth and the fourth noble truth. And by the end of this week, we'll finish all the four noble truths. As usual, we will divide this lecture into two halves. For the first half, we will start off with the third noble truth, truth of the cessation of suffering, followed by happiness, personal and family life, and then Nibbana or Nirvana will cover half of it. And then in the second half of this lecture, we will finish the second half of Nibbana, then move on to happiness through happiness, the fourth noble truth, truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering, and then a few words on homework and reflections 3. So now let us move on then to the first part. Well, this is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, the complete fading away and cessation of this very thirst is abandoning, relinquishing, releasing, letting go. So this is the Pali, right? Quotation of the third noble truth, translation into English, complete fading away and end of this very thirst. Remember, thirst was the cause of the suffering, so now it's the end of this very thirst. It's abandoning, relinquishing, releasing, letting go. So all these are different words to explain the end of this thirst, of this craving, and then we have the end of suffering. Well, the truth of the cessation or end of suffering is the goal of the Buddhist path. The Buddha once said, just as the ocean, although vast, is of one taste, the taste of salt, so also his teaching, although many-faceted and vast as the ocean, is of one taste, the taste of nirvana. Yes, so why do we practice Buddhism? Because we want to achieve the ultimate goal, the end of suffering, and that is nirvana. So we have seen that in a previous lecture that if we summarize the Buddha's teachings, it is all about suffering and the end of suffering. Yeah. So here the analogy is Nibbana is like the ocean. Yeah, it is very big, but the ocean tastes like has salt, so it is salty. Yeah. So although the Buddha has given us 84,000 kinds of teachings, so many, so numerous, but ultimately the goal is all the same. The taste of the ocean, the taste of salt, the taste of nirvana. Okay, so in this picture here, you see the third noble truth, end of suffering, which is nirvana, the vast ocean. Yeah, one taste, the taste of nirvana. Now, the cessation of suffering or end of suffering is very broad. Yeah, we can consider this from 3 different levels. So when we talk about the first level, the end of suffering here and now, in this life, we are referring to the end of suffering here and now in this life, this very life of ours, right? So that is one level of understanding the end of suffering. And then the second level is to think in terms of happiness and good fortune in our future lives. Okay, so we also want to have end of suffering in our future lives. We want to have happiness. We want to have good things happening in our future lives. And then at the third level, the ultimate level, that is the experience of nirvana itself. Okay, the experience, the taste of the ocean. So when we talk about having happiness in this life and happiness in future lives, we're still talking about relative happiness. We're still talking about worldly happiness. We're still talking about mundane happiness. And then when we talk about the third kind of happiness, the ultimate happiness, that is the happiness of liberation, yeah, or supra-mundane happiness. Okay, so when we talk about end of suffering, when we talk about happiness, we can distinguish it into these three levels. So let us talk a little bit more about these three levels. So happiness in this. Now, practicing Buddhism in the short term can lead to happiness of a material nature in the sense of improved physical conditions and or to happiness of an inner nature in the sense of greater peace of mind. This is one dimension of the end of suffering. Being of this life, it is similar to what Christianity calls the kingdom of God on earth. So we are now all here, right, in this life. So we also want to experience happiness in this life, right? We want to have as little suffering as possible in this life. So if we can follow the Buddha's teachings, then it will also lead to more happiness in this life, right? In terms of improving our body and mind, in terms of improving the material conditions that we have, in terms of having greater peace of mind. So if we follow the Buddha's teachings accordingly, we will experience this kind of a worldly, mundane, relative happiness even in this life. Yeah. So in Christianity, they call it the kingdom of God on earth. Yeah. While on earth, while in this life, we can experience the kingdom of God that is associated with happiness. Okay. So you take a look at this picture here. You see this is the world now, right? Everybody is in gray or black. Oh, rainy day, so gloomy. And then if we follow the Buddha's teaching, we are like in yellow. We are connected to the radiance of the sun, right? The Buddha's teachings, and we can experience happiness in this life, bodily and mental happiness. What about the yeah, we can talk also about happiness in future lives. Now, practicing Buddhism can also lead to happiness and good fortune in future lives. This implies rebirth in fortunate circumstances where we enjoy happiness, prosperity, health, well-being, and success, whether as a human being on this earth or as a celestial being in the heavens. That means as a God in the heavens, right? This dimension of the end of suffering is similar to the heaven of the monotheistic religions. So monotheistic religions means that they believe in one God. Yeah. So the teachings teach that when you passed away, we want to be in the same heaven as that of God. Okay. So this is happiness in future lives. If we go we follow and practice the Buddha's teachings, not only will it lead us to have happiness in this life, but we will have good rebirths. In our next rebirth, we can be born as a human being again, or we can be born as a god in one of the heavenly realms. And then if we are born as a human being, we will continue to experience happiness, wealth, health, well-being, and success. Yeah. So in monotheistic religions like Christianity, this is similar to the heaven of God. Yeah. So here, happiness in future lives on earth as if is in heaven. So this is the second level, happiness in future lives. And then the third level, the happiness of liberation or nibbana or enlightenment. This is the total end of suffering, the ultimate goal of Buddhism, which is also attainable here and now or in future lives. So the ultimate level of happiness is the happiness of Nibbana, of enlightenment. And we can actually achieve Nibbana if we're very good, right? If we practice very well in this life, yeah? Or if not in this life, in our future lives. So this is what we mean by the happiness of liberation. These are the three levels of happiness that we can talk about in terms of the end of suffering. Now let us then move on to talk about happiness and morality. Now if you have your lecture 6 notes with you, we have just finished the first page of the lecture 6 notes. If you don't have the notes in front of you, it is okay. Just listen to this PowerPoint presentation, and then after that you can review your lecture 6 notes. So moving on to page 2, right? Happiness and morality. Now the Buddhist position is that there is a necessary and causal correlation between morality and happiness. That which is morally good, we call it skillful or wholesome, leads to happiness. And that which is morally bad, or we call it unskillful or unwholesome, leads to happiness. So how to be happy in this life and for future lives, right? Well, the Buddha teaches us that if we want to be happy, we must observe and practice morality. We must practice ethical discipline, yeah? Because if we practice morality and ethical discipline, we are doing things that are skillful and wholesome, and this will make us happy. On the other hand, if we do not practice morality and ethical discipline, and we do bad, unskillful, unwholesome things, then we will not be able to have happiness in this lives or in future lives. So in Buddhism, there is a very close connection between happiness and morality. So accordingly, a mind which is poisoned with greed, hatred, and delusion is a mind that is unskillful, defiled, ill, and in bondage. That is a mind that suffers. In contrast, a mind that is free from the three poisons is a mind that is skillful, pure, well, and in freedom. That is a mind that is happy. Hence, when we have skillful qualities, we experience mental health, mental purity, mental ability, all resulting in happiness. Okay, so this is a further elaboration of what we mean by morally good actions, skillful actions, wholesome actions. Basically, we must develop a mind, yeah, that is pure, that is wholesome, that is well, and in that sense, it is free. Then this kind of mind can experience happiness. If our mind is filled with the three poisons, as you can see here, attachment, aversion, ignorance, or greed, hatred, delusion, then it has lots of defilements, right? Attritions, it is not skillful, it is unwholesome, and it is in bondage. That means it is tied up, yeah? A mind like a mind in prison. So because of this, our mind will suffer and will not have happiness. So again, there is a close connection between happiness and morality, happiness and ethical discipline in Buddhist teachings. Okay, so on the left, the three poisons will make us unhappy. On the right, if we do wholesome things, we will be as happy, as pure, as wholesome as this little monk, okay, on the right of this picture here. Now, there's also a close association between happiness and mindfulness, according to the Buddha's teachings. If we wish to be happy, one option is to change the nature of the world, to conform to our desires, to conform to our wishes. Another option is to change ourselves to be in harmony with the nature of the world. Buddhism adopts the second option. because the first option is simply not possible. All right? So yeah, we all want to be happy. So how to be happy? Well, we can consider two ways, right? One, to change the nature so that it 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 fulfills our wishes. Yeah, to change the world so that it fulfills our wishes, and then we can be happy. But how can we change the world, right? The world is so complex, so beyond us. So this option of changing the world to make us happy is really not possible. So how? If this option is not possible, then we must change ourselves, right? So that we can act in accordance with the way the world is. So if we can flow with the currents of the world, if we know what's the nature of the world like, and if we can act in accordance with the nature of the world, then we can also be happy. So here it is very important to have an open, flexible mind, yeah, and flow with the currents of this world. Well, in this picture, it is said that the mind is everything. What you think, you become. Okay, so the power of the mind is very important in the Buddha's teaching. That's why there's so much emphasis on purifying the mind, right? We talk about avoid evil, do good, and purify the mind. The basic teachings of the Buddha. So according to the Buddha, it is only when we have a mind under our own control that we can be truly happy, not when we come under the control of our mind. If we want to have a mind under our control, we should develop mindfulness and clear comprehension, that means clear understanding in all aspects of our daily life. So, for example, when dressing, we know that we're dressing. When eating, we know that we're eating. The same goes for drinking, walking, standing, sitting, speaking, keeping silent, etc., etc. In other words, in every bodily action that we do, we must be mindful, we must be aware of what we are doing, and we must have a clear understanding of what we are doing. So because the mind is everything, what we think we become, so the Buddha tells us here that we must discipline our mind. We must control our mind. If we do not control our mind, then our mind will control us. Then we can be very we can be upset very easily. We can give in to all the defilements, all the greed, anger, delusion very easily. So it is very important to discipline our mind, to control our mind. Yeah, don't let our mind run wild like a monkey mind. And so how to control our mind? How to discipline our mind? We must be mindful of every action that we take. We must know clearly and understand clearly every action that we take. So here in this picture, mindfulness. When we breathe, we know that we're breathing. When we gaze at the clouds, we know that we are gazing at the clouds. When we exercise, know that we exercise. The same goes for walking barefoot, spending time with nature, open mind. When we forgive, we must know that we are forgiving. Take a walk with a dog, take a bath, cooking, planting, chatting with friends, relaxing, doing guided meditation. Whenever we are engaged in any action, we must be mindful and understand our action. Okay, so this is the very close relation between happiness and mindfulness. All right, so we've talked about 3 levels of happiness. First of this life, second of future lives, and third of Nibbana. We've talked about the close association between happiness and morality, and then happiness and mindfulness. So now let us move on to talk about personal and family life happiness. So we're moving on to the second part. So here you can see this picture, right? Happy people build their inner world. Unhappy people blame their outer world. So how to be happy? Yeah, we discipline our mind. Once we can discipline our mind, our inner world will be happy. Yeah, and things will go smoothly for us. Yeah. Whereas if we find fault with every other person, every other thing outside of us, we will lead unhappy lives. So for a layperson or householder who seeks sensual pleasure and happiness while pursuing a livelihood, Buddhism teaches 4 types of happiness. First of all, the happiness of having wealth. Second, the happiness of using wealth. Third, the happiness of debtlessness. And fourth, the happiness of blamelessness. Okay, so for your devotees who are householders, laypersons, and they all want to be happy, right, in this life, in this mundane world, so we can, as monks, we can teach them, we can give them advice based on the Buddha's teaching of how to be happy, how to have wealth, how to use wealth, how to be debtless, and how to be blameless. If we can do all these things, we will be able to experience happiness in this life, yeah, in our mundane world. Talk about the first aspect, the happiness of having wealth. Enterprising is his occupations. Heedful is his arrangements. Balanced is his way of living. He safeguards the wealth he earns. Quotation from the Pali Canon, the Buddhadhamma Sutta. So this sutta instructs that a householder's occupation should not be illegal and immoral. Whether as a farmer, trader, teacher, doctor, or nurse, he or she should be diligent and skillful. He or she should be able to discern the proper means of livelihood and fulfill his responsibilities. This is called the accomplishment of earning, diligence, and effort. Okay, so here we're talking about happiness of having wealth, how to acquire wealth, right? So here the Buddhadhamma Sutta tells us that we must make sure that we find the right kind of occupation, the right kind of livelihood. And when we find this right kind of livelihood, we should be hardworking and we should be skillful. So if we do this, then we will be able to fulfill the accomplishment of earning. That means earning our salary, for instance, earning money. We will be able to fulfill the accomplishment of diligence, hard work, and making effort in whatever occupation, whatever profession that we choose, right? So in this picture here, in ancient times, or perhaps even now, right, there are people who work in farms, in agricultural, rural sector, and of course, many people now work in urban sector, in our offices, as in the picture on the right shows, right? So countryside, whether we are making a living, having occupations in the countryside or in cities and towns, urban centers, we must make sure we have a wholesome, we must do the right kind of occupation, the right kind of livelihood. So this is how we can acquire wealth, right? When earn money, have salaries through our hard work and effort. Now, having wealth, the householder should then protect it so that kings cannot seize it, thieves cannot steal it, fire cannot burn it, floods cannot carry it away, and evil heirs cannot remove it. This is the accomplishment of maintenance. Okay, so let's say we work and every month we have a monthly salary. So when we have this monthly salary, we must know how to protect it, right? So that it will not be so easily lost. After all, we work so hard for 1 month, and then if we do not know how to protect it, how to save it, and then we can easily fritter it away, lose it away, right? So here it is saying protect it so that other people cannot steal it. For instance, we can keep it safely in the bank. If we put it in our bank, then even if we have a fire, it will not burn it, right? Even if they have disasters, our savings will still be intact. And we must be careful, right? What to do with our monthly salary or whatever money that we have. If we just give it away to people without proper judgment, then we can very easily lose the money that we work so hard to earn. Okay, So this is the accomplishment of maintenance. Then he should also associate with and learn friends who are skillful in their work. This is the accomplishment of association with good friends. So here the Buddha tells us that we must also have good company, right? Yeah, if we mix with good company, we will be fine. If we mix with bad company, we can easily lose the money that we work so hard to earn. So in this picture here, good friends help us to find important things when we have lost them. Our smile, our hope, and our courage. In addition, the householder or layperson should be able to balance his income and expenses, not being extravagant or miserly, just as a goldsmith holds a balance, not dipped down or titled up. If a householder with little income leads an extravagant life, he enjoys his property like one who eats wood apple. If a householder with a large income leads a miserly life, he will die starving. He must know the middle way to balance things in life. Okay, so when we have this monthly salary, we must know how to balance it, right? So just like having a balance, yeah, the picture on the right, you cannot be too heavy on one side in terms of our expenses, or it cannot be too heavy on the other side in terms of our savings, right? If we use up all our money, then it is like eating wood apple, which is a very expensive fruit in ancient times. If we save everything and we are so stingy and miserly, then we can die starving, right? So we must know the middle way to balance things in our life. Okay. The Digajanu Sutta further teaches that one should avoid the four ways of losing wealth: being addicted to sex, alcohol and drugs, gambling, and associating with evil friends. Just like a big tank with 4 inlets and outlets, closing the inlets and opening the outlets will lead to outflow of water. So be very careful of these 4 ways of losing money, right? Do not be addicted either to sex, to alcohol and drugs, to gambling, or mixing with bad company. So this is like a tank, right? We have 4 holes in which we pour in water. Like here, we are putting in our money. But if there's another, inside the tank, there's another 4 holes at the bottom, then whatever water we fill in, it will go out, right? So whatever money we put in, it will go out. So make sure we don't have the 4 holes at the bottom that will make us lose our hard-earned money or income. Yeah, so here on this picture, addiction, the disease that makes you too selfish to see the havoc you created or care about the people whose lives you have shattered. So make sure we're not addicted to anything, right? Especially sex, alcohol, and drugs, gambling, bad friends, or computer games, or anything that will make us lose our senses and our income. Yeah, when you advise your devotees and householders. So in short, wealth increases by diligence, hard work, maintenance, association with good friends, and balance. Wealth supports life comfortably to afford the 4 necessary requisites: food, housing, clothes, medicine, avoiding the danger of heat, coldness, illness, hunger, and thirst. All right, so if we follow the Buddha's teachings, the Digajanu Sutta, we'll be able to have our wealth and protect our wealth. Yeah, and then wealth can change into merit and wholesomeness to enhance the good quality of mind. Just like how a pond near a village with clear, cool, and fresh water cleans and enables villagers to draw water to drink, bathe, and satisfy their needs. Okay, so when we have wealth, when we can earn income and protect them, we can use this wealth to turn it into merit, yeah, to turn it into wholesome things, and then in this way we can have a wholesome mind. And then we can use it to benefit people, just like a pond, right? In olden times, there's a pond in a village. Clear, cool, fresh water. Then it can lead other villagers, yeah, the people of the village, to drink water, to bathe, to satisfy their needs. So if we use our resources, income, money, properly, we can benefit ourselves, our family members, and others as well. Okay, so now let us move on to the happiness of using wealth. One portion for his wants he uses. 2 portions on his work and happiness he spends. The 4th for times of need he keeps. So this is a text, yeah, and from the Pali Canon, and the Sigalovada Sutta teaches that wealth and property should be equally divided into 4 portions. A householder should spend the first portion for food, drinks, donation, and charity to earn merit. He should invest the second and third portions in business to increase his wealth. He should keep the 4th portion for his future needs to ensure the survival of his family in times of emergencies, economic recession, joblessness, sickness, old age, natural disasters, social turmoil, and political conflict. Okay, so on this picture here, you see the Sigalovada Sutta, the discourse to Sigala, a layperson, and this is the layperson's code of discipline. So how to use the income, the money, the resources that we have? So this sutta tells us, divide it into 4 parts, okay? The first part, use it for our food, our drinks, for charity, right? For donation. In this way, we can earn merit. The second and third part, right? Whatever business, whatever profession, whatever livelihood we have, we use it for this business so that we can increase our wealth. And then the last part, yeah, we must save for future needs. Yeah? If we don't save during difficult times like now, for instance, the COVID-19 pandemic, we may get into trouble. Okay? The Apitaka Sutta teaches that the householder should use his wealth properly for his pleasure and happiness, his parents' pleasure and happiness, his children and wife, serving his friends, servants and friends, rendering assistance and donation, paying taxes, bills and accommodation, and making and sharing merit. Wealth and property not put to proper use will be wasted, and he will reap no merit and benefit. The wealth he accrues is worthless if he neither enjoys it himself nor gives it away. Just like how the water in a haunted place dries up. Okay, so this is sort of a summary from another sutta known as the Apitaka Sutta. So again, the emphasis is on the layperson, the devotee, the householder. Use your money properly, yeah, for yourself, for your parents, for your children, for your wife, for your family. If you have servants and friends, share with them. Do donation. Make sure you pay your taxes, whatever bills you have, yeah, and then if you do this, you can make merit and you can share your merit. Then everything will not be wasted. Okay? Otherwise, if you do not know the proper ways, you will waste all your resources, all your money. Just like water in a haunted place will dry up. So this is the happiness of using wealth. Then let us move on to the next aspect, which is happiness of debtlessness. Okay? Poverty is called suffering in the world. So too is getting into debt. A person who becomes indebted is troubled while enjoying himself. This is from this Inasutta. So if we're poor, right, of course we will suffer. Now if we have money, but we have debts, we have all kinds of debts, we will also suffer. Okay? So we must be careful that we do not get ourselves into debts, right? Yeah, if we borrow money, lots of money just to enjoy ourselves, this will not lead to happiness in the long term. Yeah, so we will have debts, and then we have to pay the debt, which will come with interest. So the Inasutta teaches that a householder who enjoys sensual pleasures should not get into debt, have interest payment, have a note on interest payment, so as to avoid being hounded and fall into bondage. Otherwise, his life will be filled with sadness, bitterness, pain, and suffering. Hence, he should be able to pay his taxes, bills, and accommodation in order to enjoy sensual pleasures. So whatever money that we have, make sure we use them properly, right? To pay our taxes, our bills, rentals, whatever. And then we can enjoy life, right? If we do not plan how to use our money properly, we just want to enjoy life in the short term and then incur all kinds of debts, then we will suffer, right? So you must be careful not to have debt, because once we have debt, we have to pay interest. Let's say if we borrow $100, we cannot pay immediately, then we may have to pay another 3% interest, and this will accumulate. Then we will become as if we're in prison. Yeah. So you look at the picture here. The man on the left, he has lots of debts, and then when the debts get very heavy, he's like, oh dear, what to do, right? Hopeless, lying down on the floor. Then on the right, we have this woman. She saves very well. She knows how to use her money wisely, and as such, she does not have any debt, and then she can be happy. Okay, so tell your devotees, householders, to be very careful not to get involved in debts. Yeah, like in Singapore, sometimes people that out of desperation, they borrow money from those what we call sharks, right? Who charge them high interest rates, and then if they don't pay on time, then the borrowers will send people to splash paint on their door and do all kinds of things to make sure that they pay their debt. Okay. Then finally, let us talk about the happiness of blameless. Having engaged in bodily misconduct, verbal misconduct, misconduct of mind, or whatever else is flawed, not having done what is skillful, having done much that is not, at the breakup of the body, the undiscerning one reappears in hell. Yeah. So quotation from the Lakkhana Sutta. So the Lakkhana Sutta teaches that a householder should aim for purity in his bodily, verbal, and mental activities, so as to experience spiritual development and the bliss of blamelessness. He should abide by the 5 precepts and the 8 precepts and practice the 10 wholesome actions. He should also not engage in the 5 kinds of wrong occupation, the trading of weapons, human beings, flesh, intoxicants, and poison. So here when we talk about the happiness of blamelessness, we are talking about the happiness of morality, of ethical discipline, of doing the good things and avoiding the bad things. So if we do the good things, we will get good rebirth, right? Like this 6 realms, we will be born in the human world and heaven. So if we do bad things, we will be born in the lower realms, like the realms of the hungry ghost, hell, animal world, or asuras, right? Or demons or titan worlds. Okay? We must move away from unwholesomeness represented by red, right, on the left, and move to wholesomeness, yeah, purity, represented by yellow on the right of this picture. We must observe the 5 precepts: no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, no intoxicants. So if we can do this, we're actually showing respect for life, showing respect for others' property, respect for our pure nature, respect for honesty, and respect for a clear mind. And we must avoid the 10 unwholesome actions, right? So, such as in terms of body or bodily action, harming life, taking what is not given, sexual misconduct, yeah, and then unwholesome actions pertaining to our speech. We must avoid false speech, malicious or divisive speech, harsh or harmful speech, gossip, yeah, 4 aspects of unwholesome speech. And then in terms of our mind, we must avoid covetousness or greed. We must avoid ill will or hatred, and then we must avoid having wrong view or delusion. Okay. Now, by leading a blameless life, the householder can gain merit, skillfulness, happiness, welfare, and be reborn in the heavenly realms after death. His mind will be filled with loving kindness and compassion. He will stay in right livelihood, gratifies his wife, gains trust and sincerity, lives with mindfulness and heedfulness, being dear to all sentient beings, and feels safe and happy wherever he goes. So this is a summary, yeah, of how we can be happy if we lead a morally blameless life. So looking at this picture, the mirror of happiness. To strengthen the faith in the Buddhadhamma, a lay follower should realize that true happiness lies within his own mind. By following the way taught by the Buddha, he can experience this peace and happiness. This happiness, when it is radiated on others, will multiply in the minds of others and will then be reflected back to him again. The mind of faith is pure and gentle, always patient and enduring, never arguing, never causing suffering to others, but always pondering on the triple gem. So how to be happy in this life and in future lives? Avoid evil, do good, purify the mind. Okay? So understanding about happiness of this life and future lives, talk about happiness in the ultimate sense, happiness of liberation, nibbana. This is the noble truth of the cessation, end of suffering. The complete fading away and cessation of this very thirst is abandoning, relinquishing, releasing, letting go, the fourth noble truth, of course. And the happiness of liberation, of nibbana or enlightenment. This is the total end of suffering, the ultimate goal of Buddhism, which is also attainable here and now or in future lives. And what is nibbana? Well, there are 7 expressions among many expressions that we can use to define nibbana. So let us take a look at 7 ways of understanding or explaining nibbana. So first, the basic and standard definition of nibbana is the cessation or the end of the 3 unwholesome factors of greed, hatred, and delusion. All other expressions of nibbana are but different perspectives of understanding nibbana as the extinguishing experience or process of the extinction of the defilements, afflictions, poisons, or fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. So the most basic understanding of nibbana is the end, yeah, the cessation of these 3 poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. So if we no longer have these 3 poisons, we will realize nibbana. So in this sense, nibbana is like if we have a candle, right, and we light it up, there's the flame, the fire. So the poisons represent the fire, and then if we blow them out, then we have the extinction, yeah, we have the elimination of these fires of the 3 poisons, and then we will have liberation, we will have enlightenment. At the moment the Buddha understands suffering is arising, its cessation, and the path leading to its cessation, these fires, right, these fires of the 3 poisons were extinguished. One who has experienced these 3 fires came to be aptly defined by the metaphor of being cool or pacified. This process is the same for all who reach awakening. So Siddhartha Gautama, right, when he realized enlightenment, what did he achieve? Basically, he has managed to extinguish the fires of the 3 poisons. When he has extinguished, we can call him as being cool, as being pacified. Yeah. So this happened to him, and this will happen to anybody who achieves, who realizes enlightenment. So we will then understand the 4 noble truths. We will understand the Noble Eightfold Paths, and of course we will understand and realize the 3 universal truths when we attain Nibbana. What about the second Nibbana? One who has attained Nibbana by practicing the cultivation of wholesomeness, one will experience the highest wholesomeness, which is Nibbana. In the Nibbanic experience, one does not face a moral dilemma or a moral struggle. There's no inclination to do what is unwholesome, nor the resistance to do what is wholesome. All actions are spontaneously wholesome. So, for somebody who has realized Nibbana, he has no more defilements, no more afflictions, because the three poisons are no longer present. So if the three poisons are no longer present, that means that his mind is only full of wholesomeness, right? So as a result, we call Nibbana also the highest wholesomeness. When this person has the highest wholesomeness, he will not have any moral dilemma, right? Sometimes in life we decide, whether to do this or to do that. But when somebody is perfectly wholesome, no more, he doesn't have to make this kind of decisions, because automatically he will know what to do. And automatically whatever decision he makes will be in the wholesome path, in the path of purity. So this is why we call Nibbana the highest wholesomeness. Okay, then moving on, third definition of Nibbana. This highest wholesomeness attained through realizing the three universal characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and not self, transcends karma wholesomeness. Hence, Nibbana is also the cessation of karma, the end of karma. Okay? When we no longer have the three poisons, when we experience the highest wholesomeness, this means that we will also go beyond the wholesomeness associated with the mundane world, with our karma, right? Because in our early lecture, like we said, only when we have karma will we have samsara, will we have rebirth and death. If we no longer have karma, then we will no longer have the cycle of rebirth and death. Yeah, and we can achieve this when we fully realize the three universal characteristics, or also known as the three Dharma seals of dukkha, suffering, impermanence, right? Anicca, and no self, anatta, ku, wu chang, wu. Okay, so as a result of realizing these three universal characteristics, then we no longer have karma, right? And when we no longer have karma, of course, we are in the state of Nibbana. Okay, so when we have no more the three poisons, when we have the highest wholesomeness, we will totally realize the three universal characteristics. We will be in Nibbana, and then we will have no more karma, which will propel us for future rebirths, right? So end of our rebirths. Then let's move on to the fourth definition of Nibbana. Through realizing the three universal characteristics, Nibbana is known too as the highest level of knowledge. Nibbanic knowledge is not the knowledge of a metaphysical reality. It is the final awakening to the true nature of the world of sensory experience by fully comprehending the five aggregates of grasping. In other words, the nature and cause of suffering. What takes place when Nibbana is attained is not a change in the nature of reality, but a change in our perspective of the nature of reality. What comes to an end when Nibbana is attained is not the world, but a wrong interpretation of the world. Okay, so when we realize these three Dharma seals or these three universal characteristics, then we have attained the highest level of knowledge. We have attained Nibbana. So Nibbana can be also explained as the highest level of knowledge. When we attain this highest level of knowledge, then we will realize that the truth, the ultimate reality, will fully understand what we call the five aggregates of grasping, right? We will talk about these 5 aggregates in details in future lectures, but basically when we talk about the 5 aggregates, we're referring to, you see the picture here, form, the 6 senses, right? Feelings, perception, consciousness, and mental formation. Basically, body and mind, yeah? So what happened when somebody realizes Nibbana? Is it that he has changed the world? He has changed things outside of him? This is what we call metaphysical reality, right? Beyond body and mind, beyond experience? No, nothing in the world has changed, right? For the person who has realized Nibbana. What has changed is his understanding of the world, the understanding of reality, okay? So he no longer has the wrong understanding of the world. He no longer has the wrong interpretation of reality. And as such, he experienced the highest happiness, the highest level of knowledge. Okay? So this is the 4th definition of Nibbana. Let's move on to the 5th. Nibbana. What matters is not the nature of the world per se, but the world as interpreted and constructed through the lens of our egocentric perspectives. Our views and beliefs, concepts and theories, and dogmatic assertions. From this perspective, another expression for Nibbana is the freedom from views. So when somebody has experiences Nibbana, we can say that he is free, he is liberated from views. Okay? What this means, as we have said earlier, when somebody experiences Nibbana, it doesn't mean that the world has changed, right? What has changed is how his mind perceives the world. So now he perceives the world purely, not through any other wrong views, right? Because normally when we perceive the world, we perceive it through our views, through our beliefs, through whatever concepts, through whatever theories, through whatever propositions and assertions that we have. Yeah, so we are like the person, this picture on the left, right? Understanding the world like watching a movie or like watching a TV, right? All of us in our minds, we will have different movies, different television, yeah, and we will watch different films, different programs in our own television and movies. So when somebody has achieved Nibbana, no more of this TV, no more of this movies in our minds. We will just experience reality as it is. So Master Thich Nhat Hanh tells us, for things to reveal themselves to us, we need to be ready to abandon our views about them. Okay? So in this sense, Nibbana can be defined, expressed as freedom from views. Well, let's move on to the 6th definition of Nibbana. When we do not realize the 3 universal characteristics, we're enmeshed, that means we're caught up in this samsaric world of repeated births and deaths. One who is enlightened sees the absolute truth and transcends the samsaric world. He will no longer be reborn in the samsaric world. Here, hence, Nibbana is also known as world transcendence. This world of transcendence, okay, let's stop here first. So as we know, right, the world of samsara, the cycle of births and deaths, as long as we have the 3 poisons, yeah, we will be caught up in this samsara, and altogether there are 31 planes of existence, which we'll talk about in a later lecture. But basically 4 planes of misery, right, of demons, hungry ghosts, animals, and hell. 7 planes of sensual happiness. We can be born as a human being, or 6 deva or godly realms, or we can be born in 16 form planes, which are beings of fine material. Yeah. So here we talk about 1 realm of body only, no mind, 10 Brahma realms, 5 pure abodes for non-returners, or we can be born in the 4 formless planes of beings of mind only, whether it is infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. However, when we realize nirvana, we go beyond all these 31 planes of existence. This is what we mean by world transcendence, transcending beyond these 31 planes of existence. Okay, so this is yet the 6th definition of Nibbana. So this idea of world transcendence is beautifully illustrated in the simile of the lotus. Just as, O monks, the lotus, born in water, grown in water, rises above the water and stands unsullied by the water, even so, the Tathagata grows up in the world, rises above the world, and stays unsullied by the world. So when somebody has experienced Nibbana, realizes Nibbana, it's just like the lotus blooming out of the mud, right? Like we said, the mud represents samsara, going beyond, transcending the mud and blossoming into a Nibbana, transcending the world. Okay, so this is the analogy of the lotus flower. Now, let us then come to the final definition or expression of Nibbana, which is the unconditioned. Our samsaric realm operates according to the principles of dependent arising, causes and conditions. It is thus a conditioned world with conditioned experiences arising from the three unwholesome factors. Nibbana represents the one and only unconditioned experience, an experience free from the three unwholesome factors. Hence, the Buddha said that the cessation of greed, anger, and delusion is the unconditioned. In other words, all samsaric experience is conditioned and suffering. Nibbana is unconditioned and free of suffering. So here we are saying that as long as we have the three poisons of attachment, aversion, ignorance, we will be caught up in the samsaric world, and this samsaric world is a conditioned world, right? It arises because of dependent origination, because of causes and conditions, like we see here, a web of mutually interdependent causes. Now, when we no longer have these three poisons, then there's no more causes and conditions for us to appear in the conditioned world. Then we will go beyond the conditioned world into the unconditioned. So that's why we say that Nibbana is unconditioned. Okay? So the three basic poisons, greed, anger, and delusion, are limiting and conditioning factors. Their absence implies the presence of generosity, loving kindness and compassion, and wisdom. So generosity, loving kindness and compassion and wisdom are unconditioning factors. Factors that free the mind from all that is unwholesome. Okay, so as long as we have the three poisons, attachment, aversion, ignorance, we will be caught up in this samsaric world, this world of conditions. That's why we call this basic poisons, limiting factors, conditioning factors. But when we're free from this three poisons, that means if our mind is totally filled with only generosity, loving kindness and compassion and wisdom, then these virtues, this wholesomeness, this wholesome values, they are conditions, they are factors, not conditions, they are factors that free our mind, and therefore we call them unconditioning factors. Yeah, so these unconditioning factors will bring us to the unconditioned, will bring us to Nibbana, which is like this little monk on the right, wow, beaming with a radiance, right? Radiance of ultimate happiness, or the radiance of the unconditioned, radiance of Nibbana, radiance of the highest wholesomeness, the end of karma, the highest level of knowledge, the freedom from views, and the radiance of transcending the samsaric world. All right, so these are the 7 definitions or expressions of Nibbana. And on this note, we finish the first half of this lecture. Let us go for a short break, and before we come back. Yeah, okay, have a short break. Thank you very much.